Welcome back everyone. In this video we'll be looking at how I outline my own novels and short stories and trying to understand the thought processes about why I do outlining the way that I do. Let's get started, shall we? So what you can see on screen now is an example of one of the first outlines I created for my first novel, Old Eyes. And if you want to check it out, you can sign up for the VIP mailing list in the description and get the ebook for free. Anyway, let's talk about this document. So firstly, what I like to do is think about the whys of the story and the whats. Why is the story happening and what happens in the story during it? Personally, I like to break this down into three areas: the main plot, the subplots, and the personal plots, as you can see on screen here. Main plots, subplots, personal plots. The main plot deals with the primary story thread connected to more than just the protagonist. So usually it's the primary premise of the story. It's the main point of the story. So in my first novel, the first idea that I had about this was finding out what happened to Ellie and who took her. You know, just to use another example from another book. So in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, this would be tracking down and retiring the renegade Nexus 6 androids, as an example. The subplot deals with story threads which are connected to the main plot with seemingly no obvious causal links. So they're there, they're interesting, they're engaging for the audience, but it depends on the writer whether or not they are connected to the main plot in any way. They are also the stories of other supporting characters, antagonists, mentor characters, things like that in the narrative too. And another example, in Electric Sheep, the subplot would be the androids longing to understand their place in the natural order in this society in which they've escaped to, trying to survive in a world that rejects them, hunts them and kills them. And that also helps to build empathy with them, which is connected to the main plot because when Deckard does kill them, we feel sorry for them. It builds us empathy with these antagonistic characters. And thirdly, the personal plot is the subplot of the protagonist. Well, this is the way that I like to think about it anyway. What is currently bubbling under the surface long before this narrative starts. You know, life in medias res just means in the middle of things. So your story doesn't just begin where it begins, there's always something under the surface. Something's always happened to the characters before that. So for me, there's obviously like responsibility for Ellie's disappearance, which happened before the novel started. He's suffering from depression, he's drinking, he likes smoking Lamb and Butler cigarettes. You know, he has really strange, vivid dreams where he sees his dead father and things. He sees and hears very unusual, strange things. And this is, again, connected to the protagonist primarily. In Electric Sheep, for example, this would be Deckard's longing to own a real animal. You know, he eventually gets a goat, I think it is, in the novel, and then obviously I'm not going to spoil anything. Or it's his existential musings on modern society and living, needing to use a mood organ to alter his emotions because he's just emotionally flaccid, if I can say that. Now that I think about it, it sounds a bit weird. And while that's a simplistic breakdown, that's the way that I like to think of it while outlining the ideas in my head. And as you can see, I like to color code them. It's a tip that I kind of stole from Jenna Moreci. Definitely check out her outlining process too. I'll link that video below as well. And I like to color code them because it helps me while I'm writing the rest of the actual outline, what's happening scene by scene. Color coding helps me to figure out potential links between the different story threads that I have. So like the PTSD being connected with the main plot, for example, they're both color coded the same. It just helps me to think about the links so I can start thinking about how to leave those clues for the reader or how I can prepare them. And as you can see, the depression and the seeing and hearing unusual things is connected to his father's secrets in the subplot and why his father had dementia. And again, that's connected to the Black Templars, the Black Consortium, the company that Sims eventually starts working for, whether he likes it or not. And after I do this, what I like to do is do a quick rundown, as you can see below. This quick rundown, scene by scene, of how I want to structure or more funnel the story in a way. For example, it begins in his apartment, going towards an obvious goal, or it's going towards a specific scene which progresses the story forward. So for example, it moves from Sim's apartment, goes to a house, an escape sequence, there's some mines that they go to, and then suddenly, many years later, Alcoholics Anonymous are meeting, you know? So, for example, I decided to make a note and remove that and show alcoholism differently, for example, because the way that it came across, my fantastic critique partner, Nyan Smith, gave me some advice, and I highly recommend you to find a critique partner, find somebody who you can buddy up with, read their work while they read yours, and give you some honest feedback. It helps you structure it, it helps you figure out this process along the way. And for example, then it goes to the landlord, tenant, etc. Then it goes to an encounter. And again, as you can see, these are all color coded too, so I can again keep track of the different plots and links that I'm thinking about. So for example, the first four, they're obviously connected to the main plot. Then there's two, which are connected to one of the subplots, as it's color coded. Then the encounter is back to the main plot. Then the room and the escape, it's connected to the subplot with his father, but it's also connected to the main plot. So it just helps me break down and helps me organize this in my head. And again, it just helps me keep track of this. And as you can see, as I go further down, you can see this in more depth. And I write actually specific details of things that I have in my head under the certain scenes that I want to happen. However, just as a disclaimer, this is what works for me. It might not be what works for everyone. For example, Jenna Moreci likes to write it down on loads of cards, but it just helps me organize my thoughts before I start writing, because obviously a writer's thoughts are bloody crazy. And this is what works for me. All of this definitely changes. And just remember, it's just a guideline, it's an aid. It's not something that you want to follow strictly. Otherwise, you're just forcing yourself not to be creative and not to follow the story, follow the characters in a very natural, organic way. We discover the story during the writing process. We get to know the characters along the way. Enjoy that process. Don't feel restricted by it. If you think seeing my process helps you in any way, I'll leave a link in the description below so you can download my first outline as an example, a kind of template to follow so you can create your own outlines too. Mainly so you don't have to keep watching the video again and again and again and again just to try and figure out the steps, because I hate that. And please, please, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any future content. Like the video too and leave a comment below. I really want to hear what your process is. I want to hear what your thoughts are behind the outlining process, or when you just try to brainstorm your stories, whether it's a novel, a short story, a screenplay, whatever it is that you're currently working on. And click on the alarm bell icon so you're notified when I release a new video. And I will be releasing more regularly, especially after these next 2 weeks, as I'm crazily working on my master's portfolio. It's a creative writing portfolio, there's a lot of things to do, or maybe I'm just being OCD. Probably the latter. Get out there, keep learning, keep creating, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!